Walk into a bank with $400 to your name and they'll nickel and dime you into the ground. Walk in with $100,000 and someone offers you coffee and calls you by your first name. Same bank, same week, meet Francine and Seth, same age, same job, same paycheck landing in the same account. The only difference is the number and savings. Seth gets the overdraft notices and the polite, "We regret to inform you." Francine got handed a human being who calls himself her relationship manager, and there's a specific reason for that, and it is not good service. Hold on to that. It's the tell. Here's the part nobody says out loud. The bank isn't warm to Francine because she's wealthy. It's warm to her because, financially speaking, she's dangerous. Somewhere on the way to that $100,000, she crossed a line that flipped her from the most profitable customer a bank can have into the least. And once you see exactly where that line sits, you will never look at your own account the same way again. My name is Nick, and I've spent close to a decade watching how this industry actually makes its money, and I promise you, it is not what the commercials suggest. If you've ever stared at a balance that refuses to grow no matter what you do, hit subscribe, because today we're pulling the whole thing apart, right down to the precise dollar amount where everything flips. Here's what you have to understand before any of the rest of this lands. In money, there is no neutral. Every dollar you have is either earning interest for you or costing you interest. No in between, no parked, no resting. You're always on one side of the ledger or the other, and most people spend their entire adult lives on the wrong side. Paying rent on money. That's what I call it, renting money. You pay to borrow it, you pay to hold it, you pay a fee when you run out of it. A rental agreement where you never own anything. $100,000 is the moment you stop renting money and start owning capital. And capital, unlike you, never sleeps. It just shows up every morning and works. Banks know exactly where that switch happens. The question is whether you do. Quick disclaimer, so the lawyers relax. I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice. It's just a decade of watching the same machine grind the same people in the same way. So let's talk about how a bank actually eats. And let me start with the single most damning number in all of consumer banking. It comes straight from the government's own regulator. Roughly 9% of checking accounts generate nearly 80% of all overdraft fees. Read that again. 9% of customers pay almost 80% of the penalties. That is not a glitch, and it is not bad luck. That is the floor the entire building is standing on. Free checking for the comfortable majority, quietly paid for by the people living closest to zero. At its peak, before regulators started leaning on them, the industry pulled in around $15.5 billion a year just on overdraft and insufficient funds fees. $15.5 billion charged about $35 at a time to people who were short about $35. Picture a $4 oat milk latte that trips a $35 overdraft fee. That is officially the most expensive coffee in recorded human history, and somebody somewhere buys a version of it every single day. But fees are only the loud half of the machine. The quiet half is the spread, and it runs on you too. You hand the bank your money, and the national average it pays you to hold it is about 0.4%. 0.4. On $1,000, that's $4 a year, enough for most of a coffee, the non-overdraft kind. Then the bank lends that same money back out into the world at 7, 8, 22%. The gap between what they pay you and what they charge everyone else is called the net interest margin. And across the industry, it runs around 3.3%. They do it with everybody's money, all at once, all the time. Your deposit isn't sitting in a little drawer with your name on it. Your deposit is their raw material. Put a real number on it, hand a bank $100,000 and it might pay you $400 or $500 a year to keep it there. Then it turns around and lends your $100,000 back out as somebody's car loan, somebody's mortgage, somebody's credit line, earning $7,000 or more on the exact same money. You got $400, they got $7,000, and it was your money the whole time. Now here's the part that should make you sit up. The customer the bank loves most is not the one with the fat balance. It's the one who's always a little bit short. Think about who actually triggers those fees. To dodge an overdraft, you need a cushion. To get your monthly maintenance fee waived, most banks make you keep a minimum balance parked in the account untouched, usually a couple $1,000s. So the fee waiver, the thing supposedly there to help you avoid fees, only exists for people who already have enough money to not need it. If you've got the cushion, you never pay. If you don't, you pay every month for the crime of not having the cushion that would let you stop paying. It's a toll booth that only charges the people walking. Take Seth. He's not reckless and he's not stupid. He had $3,000 saved this time last year until a transmission died and a tooth needed a root canal in the same brutal month. And just like that, he was back down to $400. The bank doesn't see any of that backstory. On the spreadsheet, Seth is the perfect customer. He overdrafts twice a year. He never clears the minimum balance, so the maintenance fee hits every month. Every swipe of his debit card kicks a little fee back to the bank. He is, in the cold language of accounting, profitable. Francine is not. Francine keeps her balance high enough that no fee ever triggers. She moved most of her cash somewhere paying real interest, so the bank lost the cheap spread too. She reads the rate sheet. She negotiates. From the bank's point of view, Francine is overhead, and the entire consumer banking model is built on having far more Seths than Francines, which brings us to the obvious question. How do you stop being a Seth? And the answer is a number, the same number I promised you in the first 30 seconds. Here it is. About $85,700. That's the line. Let me show you why. Say you invest $500 a month and earn a steady 7% a year, roughly what the stock market has returned over the long haul once you strip out inflation. $500 a month is $6,000 a year going in by hand. By you, by your discipline. Now watch what your money does on its own. At 7%, the moment your balance crosses about $85,700, the interest it throws off in a single year, just over $6,000, becomes larger than everything you contribute by hand in that same year. Sit with that. Below that line, you're the engine, you're pushing the car. Above that line, the car is rolling on its own and you're just steering. Your money has quietly gotten a job. It clocks in every morning, makes its own coffee, and out-earns your entire savings habit while you're still asleep and drooling on the pillow. It never asks for a raise, never takes a sick day. It never once tells you it just doesn't feel appreciated around here. That's the silent raise nobody warned you was coming. A raise your boss didn't approve and can't claw back. And $85,700 sits right at the doorstep of six figures, which is why the old guys obsess over that one specific number. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's late business partner, a man richer than several small nations, is famously credited with saying, "The first 100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it." People love to quote it. Almost nobody explains why it's true. So let me watch the math. $500 a month at 7%. Getting from 0 to 100,000 takes you about 11 and a half years. Grueling, slow. This is the exact stretch where Seth checks his balance, sees a number that's barely moved, decides the whole thing is rigged, and stops. Almost everyone hits that same wall. But watch what happens to the ones who don't. Getting from 100,000 to 200,000, same 500 a month, same 7%. 6.5 years, the exact same $100,000 climb in nearly half the time, and it keeps accelerating from there. The first 10% of the journey to $1 million eats up almost 30% of the total time. The hill is steepest at the very bottom, which is exactly where everybody's standing, exhausted, convinced it isn't working. And it gets almost absurd if you just stop touching it. Take that 100,000, add nothing more, not another single dollar, and let it sit at 7%. In about 10 years, it roughly doubles to nearly 200,000. Leave it 30 years and it becomes about $760,000, $750,000 from 100,000, while you do nothing but resist the urge to spend it. The hard work is all front-loaded. Once the snowball exists, your only job is to not stand in front of it. So here's the line I want you to tattoo somewhere. The first 100,000 is the hardest money you will ever make, and the last million is the easiest. Now I can already hear it, but I can't put away $500 a month. Okay, fair. Maybe it's $250. Maybe right now it's $50. Here's what matters. The destination doesn't change. Six figures is six figures. The door is the door, no matter how fast you walk toward it. Save less, and the exact crossover point drifts a little, and the slow stretch at the bottom of the hill gets longer, sure. But the physics on the other side are identical. The money still flips from costing you to paying you. Almost everyone who ever crossed this line spent years convinced they were too far behind to bother. They bothered anyway. Now let's put real numbers on it, because this is where the gap stops being abstract and starts being something you can feel. Seth carries a credit card balance like most people do. The average is somewhere around $6,300 at an average rate that's climbed to about 22%. So Seth pays roughly $1,386 a year in interest for nothing. He doesn't get a product, a vacation, a single thing. He pays almost $1,400 a year to rent money he already spent. Francine, meanwhile, has her $100,000 sitting somewhere sane, earning around 4.5%. That's $4,500 a year landing in her account while she sleeps. So look at the same person, separated only by which side of that line they're on. On one side, negative $1,400 a year. On the other, positive $4,500. The swing between those two lives is nearly $6,000 a year before either number compounds. Seth's interest compounds against him. Francine's compounds for her. Same math, pointed in opposite directions. And if you want the version that really stings, $100,000 of borrowing at credit card rates would cost you over $22,000 a year. $100,000 saved earns you $4,500. Same number, same $100,000. The only variable is whether it's yours or theirs. So be honest with yourself for a second. Right now, today, which one are you? The one paying the $1,400 or the one earning the $4,500? There's no shame in it. Most people are on Seth's side, and most got there, honestly, same as he did. But you cannot climb off a side you refuse to admit you're standing on. Now, you might be thinking this is all fine for some imaginary rich person. So let me tell you how rare crossing this line actually is. The median American family has a net worth of about $193,000, but almost none of that is cash you can touch. The typical household has somewhere around $8,000 in checking and savings combined. $8,000, and survey after survey finds most Americans couldn't cover a surprise $1,000 expense without borrowing for it. So when we say $100,000 in actual liquid, do whatever you want with it, savings, we're talking about maybe 1 in 10 households. There is no comfortable majority to catch up to. You're trying to walk out of a room almost everyone you know is still sitting in, and Francine sat in that room for years before she found the door. That's exactly why it feels so hard. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're doing something genuinely uncommon, and uncommon always feels lonely while you're in the middle of it, and now I can finally pay off that thing from the very beginning. Remember Francine's relationship manager, the one I said existed for a specific reason that wasn't good service? Here's the reason. The instant you cross over, you stop being a source of fees and become a target of competition. The bank suddenly has to fight to keep your deposits and sell you the profitable products. So it assigns a living human being whose entire job is to make sure you don't take your $100,000 somewhere else. That's not kindness. That's retention. Walk into a big bank with $100,000 in combined balances and you trip a tear. At one of the largest banks in the country, it's literally called Platinum Honors, and it switches on at exactly that number. Suddenly, the monthly maintenance fee disappears, the out-of-network ATM charges get refunded, your card rewards get boosted, your savings rate gets a bump. The same institution that would have charged Seth $35 for being short now waives Francine's fees and calls her by name. Nothing about Francine changed except the number. She's the same person, but she crossed from the side where the bank profits off you to the side where the bank has to compete for you. And on that second side, all the predatory stuff just falls away. She has no reason to touch a payday loan running 400% interest. No reason to roll a balance. No reason to take the buy now, pay later bait sitting at the checkout. The cushion didn't just earn her money, it made her immune to the entire ecosystem that feeds on not having a cushion. And this is the part that matters more than any single number. What changes at 100,000 isn't really the balance. It's what the balance does to your decisions. When you have a cushion, You stop making choices from a crouch. You don't take the worst job because you need the check next Friday. You don't say yes to the bad car loan because you've got no other option. You can wait, you can walk away. Scarcity makes you small and fast and easy to take advantage of. A cushion makes you slow, patient, and impossible to corner. Every predatory product ever invented runs on one fuel, and that fuel is your inability to wait. You already know what the wrong side feels like, even if you've never put words to it. It feels like checking your balance before you tap your card at the grocery store. It feels like the kind of math you do at 2 a.m. about whether the car making that noise can hold on until next payday. The right side feels like the absence of all that. It's saying yes to dinner without the silent calculation. It's seeing the check engine light come on and feeling annoyed instead of afraid. The cushion doesn't just change your net worth. It changes what your own brain does at 2 a.m. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth underneath all of it. The consumer finance system is not rigged against you by a room full of villains twirling mustaches. It's worse than that, in a way. It's simply optimized around a customer who lives paycheck to paycheck, carries a balance, and occasionally runs short. That customer is the product. The overdraft fees, the swipe fees, the cheap spread on idle deposits, the 22% revolving interest, that's the whole machine. And it runs best when you're stressed and your account is empty. So when people ask why banks fear someone with 100 grand saved, this is the honest answer. They don't fear you the way you fear a monster. They fear you the way a casino fears the guy who stands up from the table and cashes out while he's ahead. You didn't beat the house, you just stopped playing, and a player who stops playing is the one thing the entire model has no answer for. That's the real reason $100,000 is a threshold and not just a milestone. It's the door out of the room. Oh, and one more thing, and it ties straight into everything I just said. The most common question I get on this channel is some version of, okay, but how do I actually build an asset that earns while I sleep? And here's the slightly funny answer. You're looking at one right now. This video, this exact style of faceless finance channel is the asset. It's capital that works whether or not I show up that day. So I put everything I know into a school community where I teach people to build channels exactly like this one, step by step. I've had a hand in over 10 of them, and inside you get the whole system. The scripting frameworks, the research process, the voice, the way you actually monetize it. It's me handing you the machine instead of just describing it. Links in the description, and it'll be there when you're ready. No rush. Now think back to Francine and Seth from the very beginning. Same age, same job, same kind of paycheck. The only real difference between them was never income, and it was never luck. It was which side of one line they were standing on. Seth isn't lazy and he isn't stupid. He got unlucky with a transmission and a tooth, and he's just still in the room, still renting money, still being quietly billed for the privilege of being short. And Francine isn't a genius. She drove the same dented 12-year-old Corolla for years while everyone told her to treat herself to something new, and she just kept quietly crossing off the months. Now, her money goes to work so she doesn't have to push the car alone anymore. Here's the thing to hold on to. That line is not a personality, it's not a talent, it's a number, and numbers can be reached. You don't have to be brilliant to get to the easy side. You have to be stubborn. You have to be patient through the slow years, and you have to refuse to quit in the stretch where it feels like nothing is happening, because that's exactly when it's working hardest. Stop renting money, start owning it, and let the bank lose a little sleep over you for once. And if you want to build the kind of asset that does that work for you, the door's in the description. Quick reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only, and what you do with your money is on you. Now go cross the line.